The thing is that it won't have any intro music or any of the nice, sleek stuff that I can give to the podcast. So, yes, sir-ree. Yes, it says now that we are live on Twitch, so I want to just say what up to Twitch and YouTube. This is the TOX News Podcast, the only source inside the crumbling castle. We are brought to you today by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, but also the Townhall Trump. The Townhall Trump. That's the first one we're going to start with, because I know after watching the first 15 minutes and that being all that I watched, it's more likely to be the more interesting of the two. So, why delay any longer and just get into the shits?
Hi, everybody, and good evening. It's good to have you with us, and welcome to Miami and our town hall with President Donald Trump. And we want to say right off the top, this is not how things were supposed to go tonight. This was supposed to be a town hall debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. But after the president contracted COVID, the debate commission announced it would have to be a virtual debate because of health concerns. The president then said he would not participate in a virtual debate. At that point, Joe Biden scheduled a town hall tonight in Pennsylvania on another network, and now the president is doing the same, his own town hall with the same venue, format, and time as NBC's town hall with Joe Biden last week. So the two candidates go head-to-head tonight, though not face-to-face, each in a key battleground state. And tonight, the president will be taking questions from voters here in Miami.
I think what's important to notice here is that she did say that they're going head-to-head because they're having their town halls simultaneously. And this is probably exactly how Trump wanted it, which was like more of a ratings battle than an actual battle of policy, ideals, stuff like that. Something more important than actual ratings, but maybe not to American corporations or the president. So
we should mention are socially distanced and they're wearing masks. And I should say this audience looks a bit like America. It's divided. Some here voted for the president in 2016 and plan to again. Some support Joe Biden, and some say they are truly undecided. We're going to get a mix of questions on a range of topics, and we're going to get to those questions in a moment. But first, with all that ado, welcome, Mr. President, and thank you for being here.
That was very well stated, I have to say. Good.
So just a quick addendum here is that I have heard a bit of hot takes here and there from people. I have only seen a few clips, but for the most part, I am going in this totally cold. So if you've already heard and seen everything about this debate, or not debate, these two separate town halls, and you're just not interested in talking about them any further, that's fine. Dip out, dip set. Let's see. Go check out Open Mike Eagle's new album, Anime, Trauma, and Divorce. Great album. Otherwise, and also Don't Feed the Monsters by Homeboy Sandman. Another great hip-hop album. But for the most part, thank you for joining me. And we're going to just get right into it. I'm also going to get my notebook, maybe take some notes here. All right. Whew. There's a couple of books I haven't gotten yet. So, yep, we're going to go right into it. I know I'm late to the game, but to be perfectly honest, I think sometimes letting hype and the zeitgeist kind of simmer down on these kinds of trend trains and then getting a bit more lackadaisical perspective, a bit more relaxed, nonchalant look at the president's and the candidates, I think that can do a bit of wellness on your self-care. So I'm coming in with a little bit of knowledge of some things that some people had said on like Twitter, a little bit on Reddit, a little bit of like articles, but for the most part, haven't even seen these yet. So we're gonna start with Trump. I'm sure it's gonna be a mess, but fuck it.
Good job.
Thank you. We're glad you're here. We're glad you're well. We send our best to the First Lady and to Barron.
Thank you.
Do you have any remaining symptoms from COVID?
Nothing whatsoever. I'm great. I feel good. Was in North Carolina today and did a big rally. We had a tremendous turnout, and just feel really good. Florida, Pennsylvania.
Interesting. This video I have seems to.
Hospital. I said that's okay. I'm going to, respond to what you say.
All right, so that was strange. The one that I had picked had a little bit of technical difficulties, so we missed about like 30 seconds of info there.
And we went over to Walter Reed, where you have tremendous professionals. They gave me Regeneron and Remdesivir both. And all I know is I felt good the following day. I felt really good.
Did the doctors ever tell you that they saw pneumonia on your lung scans?
No, but they said the lungs are, a little bit different, a little bit perhaps infected. And
infected with?
I don't know. I mean, I didn't do too much asking. I really felt good. I didn't have...
Why would he even say that? Why would he say, oh, they said my lungs were a bit infected, and then say, oh, I didn't ask too much? Because, I feel like everybody in that room was just like, what does that mean? And that just kind of, honestly just is the perfect image symbolism of Trump's presidency there, is that I'm infected, just there's not too much information about it, though. I know there's just not too much information about it, though. The president that we have now is more vague than any other politician that we've had in our history, and he's lied more often than most of our politicians in history. So it's fascinating that he can kind of slide away from saying my lungs are infected. With what, Mr. President? I didn't ask.
Much of a problem with the lungs. I did have a little bit of a temperature. Obviously, I felt there was something missing. And then I tested positive.
Well, let's talk about testing, because
Sure.
there's a little bit of confusion about this, and I think we can clear it up.
Yeah, and there shouldn't be.
Your first positive test was Thursday, October 1st, okay? Mm-hmm. When was your last negative test? When did you last remember having a negative test?
Well, I test quite a bit, and I can tell you that before the debate, which I thought it was a very good debate, and I felt fantastically. I had no problem before.
Did you test the day of the debate?
I don't know. I don't even remember. I test all the time. But I can tell you this. After the...
Perspectively, from Trump's left shoulder being actually the right shoulder, the woman with the pink face mask, she had a noticeable reaction to Trump saying, I don't know if I was tested that day. Now, we do know from reports that Trump was too late to take the rapid test that they had there on site. So we can easily take that as a no. And, if anybody can answer this directly, then it's the lie is worse than the truth, but misdirection, not so much, apparently.
Debate, I guess a day or so. I think it was Thursday evening, maybe even late Thursday evening. I tested positive. That's when I first found out about it.
Well, back to the debate, because the debate commission's rules, it was the honor system, would be that you would come with a negative test. You say you don't know if you got a test on the day of the debate?
I had no problem. Again, the doctors do it. I don't ask them. I test all the time, and
did you take a test, though, on the day of the debate?
If you ask the doctor, they'll give you a perfect answer. But they take a test, and I leave, and I go about my business.
Did you take a test on the day of the debate, I guess?
If you ask a doctor, they'll give you a perfect answer. Me, being not a doctor, can't give you a very good answer.
I probably did, and I took a test the day before and the day before, and I was always in great shape. And
I don't know if he actually answers these things because it is like a rating battle town hall. They're trying to see who can get the most views. If he's actually kind of just being as ridiculous as he usually is, if not a little tiny tinge more, because COVID has always been his worst issue. If that has actually anything to do with him trying to drive in ratings, because I feel like after, most moderates and then also kind of Joe Biden voters come in to see, okay, maybe I'm going to give the president just a little bit of time to see how he reacts. We're 5 minutes in, barely 4 minutes and 38 seconds in, and he can't answer this question directly. How many of them are you know what? Fuck it, never mind, this is fucking annoying.
I was in great shape for the debate, and it was only after the debate, a period of time after the debate, that I said, that's interesting, and they took a test, and it tested positive.
So just to button it up, do you take...
So he takes tests all the time, but then they didn't really notice that he had COVID until he started feeling symptoms. Sounds like a bit of an issue there with the testing, if it's either really inconsistent or it's not as often as the president has been leading us to believe.
Take a test every single day?
No, but I take a lot of tests.
Okay, and you don't know if you took a test the day of the debate?
He takes a lot of tests, but why can't he say specifically how many and how often? It's actually pretty easy to do that.
Possibly I did, possibly I didn't. But the doctor is very accurate information. And it's not only that doctor, it's many doctors. The one thing, if you're president, you have a lot of doctors you're surrounded by. But I was in great shape for the debate. And sometime after the debate, I tested positive.
Here, if there's an issue here, all right, go to my DMs on Twitter, @azawave, AZAWAV, and send me a direct message if this is a problem for you. But I'm going to increase the audio here, the playback speed, just a little bit, because it is an hour long, and I don't want to be wasting everybody's time. So I'm going to bump it up to about a time and a half, and we're going to run through it like that. Probably both of them, just to make sure that we can get, good, concise, and not waste any motherfucking time. Because the amount of time we're spending on him misdirecting these answers, it's already 11 minutes in my stream, 5 minutes on the what is this on the town hall. So I just want to bring it up, speed it up a little bit. If there's an issue, please hit me in my direct messages @azawave. If you're not on Twitter, I unfortunately don't really know how to hear from you yet, because most of you all are listening on podcast streams that I get no info from, So for now, we're just gonna have to roll with this. Let's get it. I have no other way for you guys to get in touch with me. If this is an issue, please get to my my Twitter handle and let me know that this was an issue. Otherwise, I'm going to take a chance here, okay? I thank you for joining me yet again, and I love you so much. Just know that. I do this because somebody has to consume all this toxicity with you. All right? So we're going to go at time and a half. It may sound a little jarring, but we're getting it.
Let's talk about...
That's when they decided to let's go.
Okay, good. I hopefully provided some clarity.
All right. 1.5 was too much. So let's try 1.25.
For folks. Let's talk about the event that was held at the White House on the Saturday before you tested positive. Subsequent to that, 13 people connected to that event tested positive. There was an outdoor reception. You've seen the pictures. There was an indoor reception. People were not wearing masks. My question to you is, at this point...
They're showing here an actual picture of that day when possible infection had happened. You have Trump speaking to Melania. On the other side is... Maureen Scalia is just next to Senator Tom Tillis. We got Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri. I don't know if he's tested positive. Amy Coney Barrett so far has not tested positive, but she is on the other side of Trump. Trump in this picture not looking too well. But they're showing a bit of a picture of people who were in the room alongside with Trump on his possible day of infecting a lot of people.
In the pandemic, knowing what we know. Shouldn't you have known better? Shouldn't the White House know better?
Chris Christie, they're showing another picture of Chris Christie, Pat A. Cipollone, a White House counsel. I like how they point out this is Donald Trump again. I guess the P might mean like currently infected, maybe. Ben Sass, I don't know if Ben Sass actually, because they're pointing out Ben Sass, but I don't think Ben Sass has COVID. Let's see here. No, all right, but he has been recently. He is kind of a critic of Trump, Nebraskan Senator Ben Sass. So that's interesting. All right, get back to it.
Than to hold an event like that?
Well, they do a lot of testing in the White House. They test everybody, including me, but they test everybody. And something happened. But as far as the mask is concerned, I'm good with masks. I'm okay with masks. I tell people wear masks. But just the other day, they came out with a statement that 85% of the people that wear masks catch it.
Well,
so,
they didn't say that. I know that study.
That's what I heard, and that's what I saw. And
So I like how they're just there. She did try to push back a little bit. Like, I know that study's not, and Trump interrupts her quickly and said, well, I saw the study and I believe it. So we're dealing with a president that is always going to look for information that benefits him more than, anybody else, really, even if it's the common good. And that's the Ben Shapiro approach to facts not caring about your feelings, because you put your feelings ahead of what you want to look for in facts.
Regardless, but everybody's tested, and they're tested often. And I also knew that, hey, I'm president. I have to see people. I can't be in a basement. I can't be in a room. I have to be out.
You can see people with
which is also pretty bullshit, because like with today's technology, and like presidents have been doing a ton of shit over phone calls all the time, right? So it's pretty nonsense in the 21st century to say that you have to be everywhere in person as president when you don't. There's a song by Milo, now known as Rap Ferreira, bus driver, and featuring, what's his name, Anderson .Paak, called Worlds to Run, and it's literally about how you can be an artist from anywhere thanks to the internet. And I think with the president having the channels that he does and the access to technology that he does, that he doesn't have to be everywhere all the time. And it's such a bullshit argument. And it's one of those things where it's like, I have to be a tough guy. I have to be out there and show people that I'm doing great and that I am their great leader. And yeah, it's cult of personality technique to say I was a very strong man and COVID could not defeat me and keep me away from all the personal things that I had to do, even at the expense of the people around me.
Mask, though, right?
I can, but people with masks are catching it all the time. I mean, if you look at the governor of Virginia, he was...
So the thing is that also, too, that they even studied this back in the Spanish flu days, back in 1918, is that, yes, people were getting infected with masks, but it was usually due to the fact that they either had misworn their masks, had masks with their, like, holes in them, like they got ruined, you know, over time, or people weren't washing them properly, or maybe even not wearing them properly. There's always this thing about making sure you have it over your nose. And a lot of people may or may not have it slip or just don't put it over their nose. So, you know, he's kind of true in the fact that people with masks have caught COVID. And it's also true that people with masks also caught the Spanish flu. But the thing is that it is actually the most proven way when dealing in public situations to shorten the spread, not infect as many people if you can, if you have it. Trump so far has not cared about that at all. So,
known for a mask. If you look at Tom Tillis, a great guy, he always had a mask, and they caught it.
Well, there are pictures of Tom Tillis actually with one of Judge Barrett's kids not wearing a mask. But, you know, Chris Christie.
And that was the picture that they had shown earlier with Trump in the room with everybody. And I like it. NBC, she's pushing back on him a little bit, but she's not allowing every lie to pass. And maybe that's why you should have just had the debate, Trump, because nobody would have had to refute you besides the old man who is running against you, who has a pretty bad time at pushing back, to be perfectly honest. But this NBC News host is just on fucking point. I unfortunately don't know her name, and it was at the beginning. Oh boy, I wasn't paying attention. I'm so sorry. Savannah Guthrie? I apologize if I'm saying that wrong, but Savannah Guthrie is holding that ass to the fire.
He was part of your debate prep.
Yeah.
He was, I believe, at that event. He came out tonight. He was sick, very sick. He was in the hospital for about a week.
I know
he
that.
came out tonight and said, I was wrong not to wear a mask.
Well, I mean, he has to say that. I think it's great. He's a friend of mine. He's a good guy. And wrong or not wrong, you have to understand.
He has to say that. But Trump, how come you don't have to say it?
As president, I can't be locked in a room someplace for the next year and just stay and do nothing. And every time I go in...
But you could. You really could, because you have the opportunities to do that. It's not like you actually have to show up somewhere and pull a lever in order for democracy to flow into the country.
To a crowd, I was with the parents of our fallen heroes. These people are the most incredible people. And they came up to me, and they would hug me, and they would touch me. And I'm not going to not let them do it.
Now, there was an event with the Gold Star families
exactly
the day after the Supreme Court event.
A Gold Star event with the most incredible people you've ever seen. And I could have chosen not to talk to them or to keep everybody away. And
or you could have done it by phone.
You know what? And I don't think that's probably where it was caught, but maybe it was.
I was going to say, you bring it up. You brought it up yourself. I mean, are you trying to suggest that? Do you believe a grieving military family gave you COVID?
No, I don't know where it came from.
Okay.
And you don't know where it came from, and the doctors don't know where it came from. Mm-hmm. But as the president, I have to be out there. I also know...
Well, there's no one that says you can't be out there, but it's just about wearing masks and having, for example, your rallies. Your rallies don't require masks.
No, I mean, let's see Kamala. She's got people now that people have it, and I'm not blaming her. I'm not saying, oh, she did a terrible thing. As president, I have to be out there. I can't be...
haven't heard anything about Kamala's campaign having it.
In a basement. I can't be locked in a very beautiful room someplace in the White House. And I want to see the Gold Star families, and I want to see everybody. And I also say to people all the time, it's risky doing it. It is risky doing
but
it.
But as president, you're right. You want to be a leader, but you also are a leader and a setter of an example. And if you're not wearing a mask when your administration is saying best practice right now is wear a mask, no, it's not foolproof.
But many people.
She's really pushing back on him pretty hard. I like it.
Catching it. Many people are getting this disease that was sent to us by China, and it shouldn't have been allowed to happen. But many people are getting this, and I mean, nobody.
That's it. And like, also, I just got to point out, because it's, you know, it's probably been said enough, but it's just like, you can't blame a country for a pathogen. Like, these things are going to continue to evolve and continue to attempt to take our lives. This is something that will continue to happen endlessly. There's always going to be a new strain of virus that will try to kill us. If there is a mutation in Ebola, I can't imagine how fucked we are.
Nobody's being blamed. Everybody is working hard to get this thing out of our country, get it out of the world. Look at what's going on in Europe. Massive spikes. They've done a very good job, but now you take a look today at the UK, you take a look at Spain and France and Italy. There's tremendous spikes.
But our death rate is worse than, well, not Spain, but those other countries.
I have things right here that will tell you exactly the opposite.
Me too. So
the UK is up 2,500%, because I knew you'd be doing this. I know you very well. The UK is up 2,500%. The EU is up 722%, and the United States is down 21%.
But we have, our deaths per capita is among the highest.
Are we talking about infection rate? Because, like, of course, as the lockdowns have gone down, you're going to get higher infections rate. And the way that we've had lockdowns in this country is very sporadic and all over the place. And it seems like right now at this point, it seems to be kind of ravaging more rural areas and outside of metropolitan areas a bit more. So we're starting to see like slower spikes, but it could hit pretty hard come November, December, and then we'll have to re-shut down again.
Excess mortality, we're a winner.
I don't know what the fuck excess mortality means that we're a winner, because we still have the most deaths out of everybody. You just can't say excess mortality, we've done better, when literally we've had more people just die from the virus. At this point, we've had, what is it, like 200 9/11s in a year? That's the amount of deaths? So I feel like if it was an actual terrorist attack, something that China had done intentionally, there would be serious payment to be what Trump would call retributed or whatever. But the thing is, though, is that we're not really... There is a good amount of people holding him accountable, that the buck stops at Trump not handling the virus correctly, leading to these 200,000 deaths. Trump is not allowing the buck to stop at him. He lets it shoot past him at a mannequin painted with China written on top of it. It's ridiculous.
On the excess mortality. And what we've done has been amazing, and we have done an amazing job. And it's rounding the corner, and we have the vaccines coming, and we have the therapies coming.
What does
and
rounding the corner
One
mean?
thing, when I got it, I had a choice: do nothing or use some of the things that we're looking at, like in this case, Regeneron.
Yeah.
And Eli Lilly makes something that's supposed to be incredible. And I think that maybe I wouldn't be doing this discussion with you right now.
I just wish you would kind of bring up, like, you know that your medical bill was about $100,000 that was paid by the American taxpayer. Do you believe that Americans should be able to get that same access to avoid 200,000 fucking deaths? Let's see here. Since I got people looking at some Twitch and some people looking at the YouTube, let's go right here. COVID US update. Hashtag motherfucker. All right. And as you could look at this graph here, is that we had a huge spike into like the 20,000, between 20,000 and 40,000 infections in these months. And now we're in the summertime and it went way up. The highest July 16th at 75,000. And we've plateaued from there. Little dips here and there, but we're starting to see about the same increase coming in October, and we could see it in November. Now, the number it is at right now in the United States reported, 219,000. The unfortunate thing is that projections are looking at 400,000 by the end of the year in America. The New York Times just posted 2 hours ago that the U.S. records 70,000 new cases in a day for the first time since July. Yup. So that number hasn't been added to that CDC graph yet, but the New York Times is already reporting it. I don't know if a president can face, justice for this kind of handling of a pandemic, but him and his administration and their herd immunity mentality has gotten countless people killed, on top of the fact that we have a healthcare system that benefits on profits and not actual health. So, let's let that sink in while I go back to the town hall.
Have therapies now and cures. Maybe you can use the word cure, but we have therapies that are absolutely incredible.
I want to pick up on something you just said. You said we're rounding the corner.
I believe we're rounding the corner.
Now, 10% of the country approximately has had COVID. That means 80, 90%, let's do the math, is still vulnerable.
Right.
There's been some talk, including from the White House lately, that perhaps it approves of what's called herd immunity. That's where you basically just let young people and everybody get sick. You try to protect the old people and those who are sick, and hopefully it gets up to a certain level, and now we're all immune.
Yeah.
So let's just be clear about it. It also means more deaths. Do you support herd immunity as a strategy? Essentially just let people get sick.
The cure cannot be worse than the problem itself. We did the right thing. We were expected to lose 2,200,000 people and maybe more than that. We're at 210,000 people. One person is too much. It should have never happened because of China.
Blaming China for an actual cause of nature. When we look at global warming, I wonder how we're going to spin it, because we've done so much to not move towards carbon neutrality right now. So is China going to blame us for global warming and the catastrophes that are to follow afterwards? Who knows? Would it be justified? Probably not, because everybody's contributing to it. But that's essentially what Trump's doing here, is he is blaming a country for a force of nature. Trump says that it never should have left China, and yet it's spread so hard throughout America. How is it not going to go through and leave China or spread throughout China if Trump can't stop it? It's very dodgy. And it allows him to escape by othering others, but it's a weak argument, in my opinion.
It happened because of China, and you have to get that and understand that. But it shouldn't have happened. But we were expected to lose. If you look at the original charts from original doctors who are respected by everybody, 2,200,000
That
people.
2 million figure, though, is if you literally
saved 2
did
million
nothing.
people.
The 2 million figure is if you did absolutely nothing, it would be 2 million. The question is, should the deaths be better than 200,000 when, relative to the rest of the world, we have a worse death rate?
I left North Carolina, which I love. I left Pennsylvania. We won a big case in Michigan because that governor has a lockdown where nobody but her husband can do anything. He can go boating and do whatever he wants, but nobody else can. The fact is we're winning all these cases because it's unconstitutional what they're doing. And
See, even after the governor of Michigan almost is kidnapped and the FBI steps in to stop a terrorist attack, Trump throws her under the bus yet again for being a tyrant, in his own words. So, great. This is, healthy democracy. And it's a great way to not really answer the question. To be like, well, we're winning all these cases in Pennsylvania and Michigan, and, it's just so deadly for him to not have to answer for coronavirus, because it is literally the issue that has led to so many dead Americans that it is his fault. On top of the fact that there are 8 million Americans that fell into poverty as well. And his Senate has done the bare minimum for the working class. So, yes.
I think they're doing it for political reasons. But the fact is, the cure, you can't let this continue to go on with the lockdowns.
Well, most
and I
of the
believe
states,
that on November 4th, you can have a lot.
We don't have any evidence that lockdowns are actually killing more Americans than COVID-19. And like I had said earlier, the Senate didn't allow the $600 unemployment benefit to continue. They cut it, and Trump had to implement an executive order to have $400, but the states had to opt into it. So his administration and his Senate, which he technically leads since it's GOP, have done little to nothing, like I said, if bare minimum, to actually help working class Americans. And that's why you see so many deaths, and that's why you see so much poverty. With 8 million joining the poverty line, you have to wonder how many people's lives will be lost from just that. So everything Trump has done in handling the coronavirus, horrible. And that's why it's so bad that he cut corporate tax rates so hard back in 2017 to cut government revenue at a time when we would need the government the most, when it needs to actually look after the American people. And I'm going to let my power level show here right now is that we should have had Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders may or may not have been able to get everything done with a Stonewall Senate, but good God, would it have been a nice change of pace to have a president that actually understands the issues of what the government is, which is a big hand lawyer for corporations and rich people, which Trump is proudly being the figurehead of, rather than the representation of the American people as a whole. Because the ones who are truly suffering the most are small businesses, some middle class, and mostly the working class, and the ones below that. So,
a lot of these governors, look at what's happening to New York. New York is a mess. They lost almost 40,000 people. They have a lockdown like you've never seen. Now they're open. It's like a ghost town. Let's go.
So, New York had a very hard time at the beginning of it. This is true. 40,000 deaths currently, right? Then we go to Florida, who has been open for weeks now. 15,000 deaths. That's such bullshit. That's got to be some bullshit. Florida? It's 3 days ago they had 3,356 new cases and 141 deaths. Florida adds 2,539 cases. It seems like every day they're adding thousands of cases to their board. They have 750,000 out of our 8 million. Added 4,000 yesterday. 87 deaths. Interesting. New York had a pretty rough time at the beginning, but if you look at where they're at today, it is a much different picture than Florida. You can even get a picture of the graphs. He said 40,000 deaths, didn't he? Well, the cases reported here is 23. And that's only 7,000. Yeah, it's about 7,000 more than Florida, who looks like they could beat it, especially since their economy is full open with absolutely no requirements whatsoever. Let's see here. I'm going to go to Wisconsin info real quick. Wisconsin has a graph similar to Florida's, is that it starts really low as the pandemic starts and then starts shooting up later on. They only have about 1,000 deaths. Yeah, but they're reporting 0 and 0. They had a rally yesterday. Oh, man. It's a different situation out in Wisconsin then, because they didn't even report any new cases or deaths yesterday. But most of the time, when they're talking about a lot of this stuff, it has to deal with it's a Democratic Party for the Wisconsin governor too. Interesting. There's a lot more info to look up on a lot of this, but the thing is that they usually, the ones that have a higher population density, especially in metropolitan cities, and you're going to see far more cases and also deaths, because there's also a bit of like you got to take into account of everybody who has in those areas the vulnerabilities to be added to the death count. So.
People, and so that is very important. People are leaving New York by the thousands.
Oh, yeah, actually, there's a perfect graph here that shows... There's a perfect graph here that actually shows the deaths as they operated. Or was it infections? Let's see here. Let me scroll down. Scrolling down, 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 down my motherfucking timeline. Ooh, gotta be scrolling down my motherfucking timeline. Interesting. I had it on here, didn't I? I retweeted it. September 12th. Yeah, it couldn't have been that far back. I retweeted it. Going down, going down, going down. Going down, going down, going down, going down. There it is. There it is. So a video came out showing the coronavirus cases, and it even showed it, and I'm playing it now on the video if you want to actually watch it. It says a flourish bar chart race, and it's showing the coronavirus cases as they increase. Arizona seems to be the one with the most as of July 2nd. It's a timeline that increases. And so far, the highest cases seem to stay in Republican, from varying from slightly Republican to very Republican. The top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 are, from slightly Republican to very Republican. Nevada being slightly Democrat, just taking over Arkansas just now. Arizona holding it down this entire time. Florida trying to keep up as we go through August. We're seeing them shoot past 20,000, followed by Louisiana, Mississippi, South Carolina, and Alabama. These are all Republican-led states. Still moving on. Louisiana just switched places with Arizona. Florida overtook Arizona. Yep, we're in August 22nd, and we have Texas, South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arizona, and Florida holding down the top spots. Georgia just overthrew Nevada, showing that a slightly Republican state will overtake a slightly Democrat. Georgia then took over Texas by September in highest cases. Tennessee then goes over Nevada, Tennessee being very Republican. And then Arkansas then takes over Nevada. Nevada being slightly Democrat. And Arkansas and Texas fighting over that last spot right there. Georgia, Tennessee, Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana, South Carolina, Arizona, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, all Republican. All having over 20,000 cases. Let's see. It ends here on October 2nd. It has Nevada being the slightly Democrat state with 23,000 cases since June 1st. Now we get, it's in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There are 11 other states ahead of it. Those states being Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, Arkansas, North Dakota, South Carolina, Arizona, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, most of them being Republican and very Republican, while a couple, 3 of them, being slightly Republican. But let's see, they're all above the Democrats. Now, the rest are mostly Republican. Now check this. You got Iowa, Idaho, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Utah, all right below Nevada, all Republican. Then you get Wisconsin, which is slightly Democratic, just above Missouri, which is Republican. And then you get California, which is very Democratic. And then you get Kansas right below that one, which is very Republican. Then you get North Carolina, which is slightly Republican. And then you get Nebraska and Kentucky at very Republican, finishing off with Illinois at slightly Democrat. Now you get 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 Democrat states on this list, whereas the rest are either slightly Republican or very Republican. So we can't just throw shade on Democrats for being Democrats, Mr. President. It's not how this works.
And you're going to have a hard time ever building it up again. So that cure, that so-called cure that you talk about, it can't be worse than the problem. The problem is a bad problem.
We've got more questions on COVID, so let's drop it for now. We were supposed to, as mentioned, be watching you on a debate stage right now. We're not doing that, so let's clear up a few things from the last one. You were asked point blank to denounce white supremacy. In the moment, you didn't. You asked some follow-up questions. Who specifically? A couple of days later, on a different show, you denounced white supremacy.
No,
My question to you is,
you've done this to me and everybody.
Why does it seem like
I denounce white supremacy? Okay,
you did 2 days later.
I denounced white supremacy for years, but you always do it. You always start off with a question. You didn't ask Joe Biden whether or not he denounces Antifa. I watched him on the same basic show with Lester Holt, and he was asking questions like Biden was a child.
So this is a little bit of a dodge.
Are you listening? I denounce white supremacy.
Okay.
What's your next question?
Do you feel, it feels sometimes you're hesitant to do so, like you wait a beat.
Here we go again. Every time, in fact, my people came, I'm sure they'll ask you the white supremacy question. I denounce white supremacy.
Okay.
And frankly, you want to know something? I denounce Antifa, and I denounce these people on the left that are burning down our cities that are run by Democrats who don't know what they're doing.
While we're denouncing, let me ask you about QAnon. It is this theory that Democrats are a satanic pedophile ring and that you are the savior of that. Now, can you just once and for all state that that is completely not true and disavow QAnon in its entirety?
I know nothing about QAnon.
I just told you.
I know very little. You told me, but what you tell me doesn't necessarily make it fact. I hate to say that. I know nothing about it. I do know they are very much against pedophilia. They fight it very hard, but I know nothing about it.
They believe it is a satanic cult run by the deep
state. The subject. I'll tell you what I do know about. I know about Antifa, and I know about the radical left, and I know how violent they are and how vicious they are, and I know how
It just went the same way that the Proud Boy question went. Exact same way. It's just like, will you denounce this right-wing group that supports you and your FBI says is a domestic terror threat? And he says, yes, but I want to denounce my political opponents, my enemies. That they shall know my name is the Lord. All right.
They're burning down cities run by Democrats, not run by Republicans.
Republican Senator Ben Sasse said, quote, QAnon is nuts, and real leaders call conspiracy theories conspiracy theories. Why not just say it's crazy and not true?
He may be right. I just don't know about QAnon.
You do know.
I don't know. No, I don't know.
Why is the woman in the pink mask is like reacting alongside the president? Like when he says yes, she's nodding her head, and when he says no, she's like, nope, you're not going to get him with that one. And it's ridiculous because he's been asked about these people multiple times. And the thing is if his FBI knows about him, why the fuck does he not? And also, too, if it's a cult surrounded around his personality, of course he fucking knows about it because he loves his personality.
Let me ask you another thing.
Let's waste a whole show. You start off with white supremacy. I denounce it. You start off with something else. Let's go. Keep asking me these questions.
I do have one more.
Let me just tell you what I do hear about it is they are very strongly against pedophilia, and I agree with that. I mean, I do agree with that, and I agree with it.
But there's not a satanic.
We gotta admit though that Trump had a whole page of his trips on the Lolita Express and also on being on Jeffrey's St. Jeffrey Island. So. He also walked in on beauty pageant girls, age of one as young as 13. So if there's a possible pedophile ring in the White House, Trump might know more about it than he's putting on.
I have no idea. I know nothing about that.
You don't know that? Okay.
No, I don't know that.
I just feel like that lady with the pink mask behind him is actually a part of QAnon because she's like, just deny it. Just deny it. They don't. If you reveal your hand, Mr. President, they're gonna know that you're JFK Jr.
Do you know that?
Okay, just this week
why aren't you asking me about Antifa? Why aren't you asking me about the radical?
Because you like vehemently on your own at all of your rallies make it very clear that you don't care for Antifa, Black Lives Matter. You want them all gone. You talked about Michael Reinl and how he was retributed by the U.S. Marshals. We know how you feel about left-wing movements, Mr. President. What we don't know is the right-wingers that you don't necessarily talk about and yet kind of egg on.
Because you're
Why aren't you asking Joe Biden questions about why doesn't he condemn Antifa? Why does he say it doesn't exist?
Because you're here before me.
No,
Yeah, I don't know, because Antifa's not a group, but also, like, you know, Joe Biden has come out and said that he doesn't support any of the looting or, you know, non-peaceful protesting. So
That's so cute. Antifa exists. They're vicious, they're violent, they kill people, and they're burning down our cities. And they happen to be radical left.
Just this week, you retweeted to your 87 million followers a conspiracy theory that Joe Biden orchestrated to have SEAL Team 6, the Navy SEAL Team 6, killed to cover up the fake death of bin Laden. Now, why would you send a lie like that to your followers? You retweeted it.
That was a retweet. That was an opinion of somebody, and that was a retweet. I'll put it out there. People...
I hadn't even heard about this one. They're like, oh, you retweeted a baseless accusation as if it was like fact, Mr. President. What are you going to say about that? He's like, it's a retweet. It's meaningless. My account is meaningless. Why do you take me seriously? What am I, the president of a military and of am I the most powerful man on the planet? I don't know. I don't know anything.
People can decide for themselves.
You're
I don't
the
take a
president.
position.
You're not like someone's crazy uncle who can just retweet whatever.
That was a retweet, and I do a lot of retweets. And frankly, because the media is so fake and so corrupt, if I didn't have social media, I don't call it Twitter, I call it social media, I wouldn't be able to get the word out. And the word is false. And you know what the word is? The word is very simple. We're building our country stronger and better than it's ever been before. And that's what's happening, and everybody knows it.
Okay, we got a bunch of questions for you.
We're winning in a lot of states.
He dodged a lot. He dodged a lot there. Like, can you say something about this baseless accusation that you retweeted that is dangerous and could threaten the lives of many people? And he's like, well, I retweet a lot of stuff, and if I didn't have Twitter or Facebook or all these social medias, people would just continue to lie to me, and I wouldn't be able to get the word out. I'm the American president. I would have no way to speak to the American people without social media.
Okay. We're winning in a lot of states.
No, he wouldn't be able to spread as much disinformation or, like, the sick shit that's inside his head directly into your brain without social media.
Okay, I'm glad you brought up the election because I do want to ask about that. That's another kind of leftover item. A lot of people have asked you, will you accept a peaceful transfer of power? You have said repeatedly, the only way we lose this election is if it is rigged. Now, that is simply not true. The fact is either candidate can lose fair and square without ballot fraud. So will you accept the results of the election?
That's the way I want it to be. But when I see thousands of ballots, right, unsolicited ballots being given out by the millions, and thousands of them are dumped in dumpsters, and when you see ballots with the name Trump, military ballots from our great military, and they're dumped in garbage cans.
See, he's going with like the side like fringe stories that came out from the New York Post and the Federalist. And here's the thing, though, is that there are always ballots that are invalidated because people fucked up, or there's like really strict like voting laws in certain districts and counties and cities. It's very complex, but I've already talked about this many times with Trump because there's a lot of ways for ballots to be invalidated that have nothing to do with who the candidate's on there, and more specifically with how the ballot was turned in. So Trump is going to use that excuse, which has been a problem. I agree, like we shouldn't have so many ballots invalidated because of a mismark or a wrong kind of bubbling or something like that. But he's going to use that excuse to say, this is, like, look over here. This is evidence of voter fraud. Look at this over here. This is evidence of a rigged election. Look over here. This is evidence of a corrupt bureaucracy. Now look over here. I am uncorruptible. I am the leader of QAnon, here to save you from the satanic pedophile ring that we all know is out there. And Joe Biden had used SEAL Team 6 to cover up the death of Osama bin Laden. Now, check this out real quick. Who came out and endorsed Trump recently? The Taliban. Now, who also came out and said it's really hard to be a Trump supporter? Osama bin Laden's niece. So, what are we doing here, right? The Taliban and Russia. I don't really care about Osama bin Laden's niece. That was mostly just funny to me. Like, it's very fascinating that she is, like, now a conservative talking point for them to be like, look at how hard it is to be a Trump supporter. But here's the thing. All right? Russia supports Trump. The Taliban supports Trump. These are two obvious powers and organizations that want our president to continue to be president. That should alarm anybody who calls himself a patriot. But the thing is, though, is that Trump is exactly the same kind of leader that the fascist movements have had, which fascism tends to be a swing against, it's an anti-reactionary movement to communism or socialism. Basically, any kind of left-wing movement will be met with fascism, and that is why we have this guy.
A handful. We could go all night, which we won't.
No,
but
no,
we
it's
could go all
happening every
night,
day.
one by one, a single case, a single day. You're talking about 150 million votes. Your own FBI director says there is no evidence of widespread
really?
fraud.
Well, then he's not doing a very good job. All you have to
See, it comes back to Trump not getting the facts that he agrees with, or the facts not agreeing with him. His FBI director, or his investigator, I can't remember who specifically she said, that investigated that there is very little fraud in the past, historically, that, you know, he is not doing a very good job because he's not pulling up the results that Trump wants. It's not necessarily a way you want to run a country.
do is pick up the papers every day. 50,000 in Ohio, the great state of Ohio. 50,000 in another location, I think North Carolina. 500,000 applications in Virginia. No, there's a tremendous problem. But let me just tell you, they talk about the peaceful transfer, right? They spied on my campaign and they got caught, and they spied heavily on my campaign, and they tried to take down a duly elected city.
Here's the thing, though, is that he keeps bringing this up as if there was like some kind of coup d'etat. But the thing is, though, is that the Democrats allowed a lot of his legislation to pass, a lot of his executive orders to go unchallenged. There's so much work that he actually got done in this meantime of that impeachment that it's total bullshit. Now, I have my own conspiracy theory that I subscribe to. I don't think anybody else should, because I only like to ponder these things because I have no answers. I am a meaningless little dweeb floating on a spaceship, trapped on this fucking little spaceship with a bunch of fevered egos, as Bill Hicks would put it. But my conspiracy theory is that the Democrats have been the worst fucking oppositional party to an actual authoritarian fascistic threat to democracy. Not because of them being weak and ineffective, but because of them looking weak and ineffective allows this illegitimate president to look more legitimate, as if he had fought off some kind of coup, as if he had justified his actions or was exonerated, even though he wasn't. The Democrats can say, oh, we impeached him in the House, and so we have exonerated ourselves. And yet they passed the tax cuts. They're barely putting up a fight for Obamacare. And I think they knew at the time, too, that Trump was going to have nearly 3 to 4 justice picks in his presidency. So, and honestly, the Ukraine case was so weak. It was so weak. It's this almost the same thing as the Robert Mueller investigation, where Trump's reaching out to foreign powers to get help on his campaign for president. But to impeach him only for Ukraine and not include the obstruction of justice from Robert Mueller, weak. And I think it was purposefully weak, because the Democrats want to look like they're putting up a fight against an authoritarian fascistic regime, when really that's just part of the show. Now, that's my conspiracy theory. There's no evidence for it besides the fact that the Democrats are ineffective and weak. Why else is Joe Biden their candidate? But he uses that narrative to his advantage, and we're not going to not hear about it ever. So it's unfortunate. I had to put it out there because it's so frustrating to see the Democrats be that opposition party to this administration, and it being so ineffective. And I have no evidence to prove any of that. I just kind of assume the two wings of fascism, what have you.
President,
whatever.
and then they talk about, will you accept a peaceful transfer? And the answer is yes, I will. But I want it to be an honest election, and so does everybody else. When I see thousands of ballots dumped in a garbage can and they happen to have my name on it, I'm not happy about that.
Okay, but just those are there is in fact no evidence of widespread fraud.
And there's no evidence of thousands of his ballots being thrown in the trash. There were 9 ballots, and 7 of them had his name. I've already gone over this.
And you were sowing doubt about our democracy.
How can you say that? You do read newspapers.
I do.
You do watch the news.
Yes,
I know you read the news, but you watch it.
I do.
Because every day they're talking about ballots that are corrupt, that are fraudulent.
And millions that are being processed right now.
But you can win a race. Take a look at me. You can win a race by 1%.
But why are you laying the groundwork for that right now? It's
I'm
like
not.
if I go play tennis with my
happen.
husband and I say my ankle's
Do you
hurting
know
right
what?
now.
I don't want that to happen, Savannah. I want it to be clean.
Okay.
I really feel we're going to win. But I want this to be clean.
Let's get
but it's sort of ironic that you and them talk about the peaceful transfer when I spent 3.5 years fighting off these maniacs, and now it turns out, everything's there, that they were the ones that dealt with Russia. And it's too bad. But peaceful transfer, I absolutely want that. But ideally, I don't.
Oh yeah, didn't the Congress also vote on Trump's increased spending on the military? So yeah, there's that.
I want to transfer because I want to win.
Yes, and I think that your words will probably reassure some folks. Let's get to our first voter. We've got Jacqueline Lugo. Now she is, I told you this audience is truly split between y'all. You are leaning Biden. She voted for Clinton in 2016. She's registered as an independent. Jacqueline, what's your question for the president?
Finally
and hold the mic
getting
up close and take off your mic because it's hard to hear out here.
Good evening.
How are you?
Welcome to Miami.
Thank you very much. It's beautiful.
Mr. President, if you knew COVID-19, as you told Bob Woodward in February.
As what?
As you told Bob Woodward in February, was airborne and deadlier than the flu.
That it was a plague.
Why did you only put in place a travel ban from China and not put in place other measures mitigating the spread of COVID-19, potentially saving tens of thousands of American lives?
Well, I did put it in very early, as you know. Joe Biden was 2 months behind me, and he called me xenophobic and racist and everything else because I put it in. And it turned out that I was 100% right. I also put it on Europe very early because I saw there was a lot of infection in Europe. And it's sort of an amazing question, and I appreciate the question and respect.
I mean, he could have blocked China very early on because they had reported back in December an outbreak. So he could have done it a lot sooner. Like a whole month, about a month and a half. And then Europe was shortly followed by after China. But we also tend to forget as time goes on that he allowed American citizens to return back as well. Because, I mean, that's fair, it's fair. But he didn't force them into quarantine or anything like that. They just came back. So...
Respect the question, but the news doesn't get out the right answer because I put on a travel ban far earlier than Dr. Fauci thought it was necessary, who I like, far earlier than the scientists.
I doubt that.
I was actually the only one that wanted to put it on, and I did it actually against the advice of a lot of people, including Nancy Pelosi, who had no clue what she was doing, and Biden. When I put on the travel ban, I put it on in January, the end of January. When I put on the travel ban, Joe Biden and others said, this is ridiculous. You don't do that. Well, Dr. Fauci said I saved thousands and thousands of lives.
Did you?
I was early. I was extremely early when I put on the travel ban.
Can I ask you, did your national security advisor on January 28th in the Oval Office warn you that this would be the greatest national security risk of your administration? He didn't say it, or you don't remember?
I read it someplace. Maybe Woodward said it or something. But no, he did not say that. But I knew it was.
I've read it somewhere. I don't know. I don't even know where I really get my information. Was it on Fox and Friends? I can't remember.
It's a big threat. At the same time, I don't want to panic this country. I don't want to go out and say everybody's going to die.
Isn't there a middle ground? You don't have to mislead, but you can.
No. There's not a middle ground. Yeah.
God, you gotta be kidding me. It's either I come out and say, hey, there's nothing we could do, everybody die, because I dismantled the pandemic task force in 2018. Or I could say, hey, guys, don't worry about it. Just be cool. Be cool.
You have to be safe, you have to be vigilant, and you have to be smart.
You're going to like this next couple of voters. It's a mom and a daughter.
Good.
Mom, Barbara, voted for you in 2016. She's leaning to vote for you again. Now, her daughter was too young to vote last time. She's going to vote for her first time in a presidential campaign, and she is leaning Biden. So imagine the dinner table at their house, okay? So, Barbara, why don't you go first and ask your question?
Bienvenido a Miami.
Thank you.
Mr. Trump, as a frontline ER doctor working through the coronavirus pandemic,
right.
I know firsthand, and I've seen that many hospitals throughout the United States are suffering financial hardships. These economic effects are trickling down to the frontline workers.
Right.
We are being, across the country, frontline workers are being fired, they're being furloughed, our salaries are being cut. And this is also happening in other economic sectors as well, including the travel industry and hospitality.
Right.
My question to you is, how are you going to get the United States back on track, both in terms of the economy and the pandemic?
So it's happening. We just set a record, 11.4 million jobs. We are going to have a phenomenal third quarter, which will be announced on
30 million Americans signed up for unemployment.
November 1st, just prior to the big November 3rd day, where I think
So if that is to remain true, that would mean if he added 11.4 back of those jobs, that would at least be somewhere around 19.6 or 18.6. My math might be wrong, but it's still more Americans out of work than there were.
this year, red wave.
Permanent, 50% of small businesses are closed down permanently.
But we're going to have a tremendous announcement, I believe. I mean, we're going to find out. But GDP is going through the roof. Jobs, real estate, houses, so many things are happening. So people were saying we're going to have a 42% unemployment. Look, this was a thing that came into our country.
We're going to have 42%. And then that's the thing, too, is we might have a second round of lockdowns that could really disrupt a lot of stuff. Yeah, we're looking at 7.9 right now, but that's reported. So we always got to kind of adjust for uncounted people, because that's just 7.9 people who have signed up for unemployment. We reached at 14% at the height back in about mid-March, between June. All right, there's no current amount right now, but we got 7.9%, which is still pretty high. Let's see. So if we have 7.9 right now, at the height of, so at the height of the Great Depression, we were looking at 24.9. So we barely touched it. But the thing is, though, is that every time we have one of these recessions, we can expect the next to hit harder. So 2008 was one of the hardest, and then we can see one pretty big coming down the horizon.
And it happened more than 100 years ago, and it happened now. They were talking about a 42% unemployment rate.
Who was talking about that? I heard 20%.
It just came out at 7.8% unemployment, and people can't even believe it. Our economy is going to be, next year, if we don't have somebody that raises taxes and quadruples taxes, which they want to do and kills everything, our economy is going to be phenomenal next year. We're going to have a phenomenal. And I'll tell you, Savannah, we had the greatest economy in the history of our country last year, including the state of Florida, where we are now, and Pennsylvania, and North Carolina, and Ohio, every place. We had the greatest economy we ever had. We had to close it down. We saved 2 million lives. We're opening it up. We have a V-shape, and it's coming back. It's coming back very fast. One other thing, we really helped the hospitals. We've sent billions and billions of dollars to the hospitals. In addition, hundreds of millions of masks and gowns, and we went into the ventilator business because this country was not equipped with ventilators. And I'm not blaming anybody for it, but we're now making thousands of ventilators a month. And we have all we can use. We're sending them all over the world because the world needs them. So they've worked very hard and really very, very effectively. Thank you. Great question.
Let's talk to Isabella. Put the mic close to your mouth. Okay, go ahead.
Mr. President, my parents are, as you heard, both frontline healthcare workers, and I've seen the physical and the mental tolls that this pandemic has taken on them firsthand, as well as the exacerbation of coronavirus due to Americans who are not wearing masks or participating in social distancing. After contracting COVID-19 yourself, has your opinion changed on the importance of mask wearing?
No, because I was okay with the masks. I was good with it, but I've heard many different stories on masks. I mean, I had, being president, you have people, they bring meals, they bring this, and I had an instance recently where a very wonderful person is bringing me a meal, and he's playing with his mask, and he's touching his mask all over the place, and then he's bringing a plate in, and I'm saying, well, I don't know if that's so good. I mean, the good news, I didn't eat it, okay? I decided not to eat it. This was a month ago, but look.
That's the thing, though, is that somebody would, touch their face regardless of not having a mask or having a mask. I think what Trump should acknowledge is whether or not they should have had fucking gloves. But there he goes, blaming the waiters and waitresses again, the people who bring him his food, when obviously he can get it himself. He's the president. Just have the chef cook it right there.
You have on the masks, you have two stories. You have a story where they want, a story where they don't want. I am all for it.
I don't get that, because it's just all of your public health officials, your administration, they're in unison about this. No. They're all in unison about it. The University of Washington, which is they have a model that your coronavirus task force relies on, says that if everyone wore a mask, you could cut expected deaths in half.
And then 60,000 lives. Disagree.
Well, what does that mean?
Scott Atkins, if you look at Scott, Dr. Scott, he's from great guy, Stanford. He will tell you
he's
that
not an infectious disease expert.
Oh, I don't know. Look, he's an expert. He's one of the great experts.
Oh my God, this lady behind him reacting to that as well. It's just funny that she's like, you have a whole team of people telling you that if they wear masks, we could save lives. And he's like, yeah, but there's this one guy who says it's a lie.
Experts of the world.
But I don't get it because you have so much power and influence as president. You could go to you could require it at your rallies, and you could say, everyone put on a mask right now. And the University of Washington says you would save lives.
University of Washington, and you have other places say different things. You have a lot. Hey, Dr. Fauci said don't wear a mask, right?
At first, but then everybody agreed.
Well, I don't know. Then he changed his mind. But then you have a report coming out 2 days ago that 85% of the people wearing masks.
I looked at that report. It's not about mask wearing. It was neutral on the question of masks.
We're on the same side. I say wear the mask. I'm fine with it. I have no problem. We're on the same side.
Let's take a break. We're going to get more questions right after this.
Fine with it. Wear the mask. Wear the mask. They're not required at my rallies. Just wear the mask. Oh boy. Oh, little pause there. I gotta fast forward through. It's for their sponsors, which I do not have. I have no sponsors. It is just me, myself, and my lovely viewers and listeners. Oh, okay. I thought they were about to return, and then it just like zoomed back.
For a town hall.
There we
Live
are.
in Miami with President Trump for a town hall. Thank you again, Mr. President. We have another voter now, Christy Alonso. Come on out, Christy. She is leaning slightly towards you. She says she voted for you in 2016. Christy, you ready? Take the mask off, hold the mic close, and let's hear your question.
Thank you for your service, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
We're a hard-working, middle-class family of four. My husband and I are both self-employed, and we have to get our own individual health care. As you know, healthcare costs have gone up considerably over the decades, and you had originally said you were going to repeal and replace Obamacare. What is your plan now in 2020 to make healthcare costs affordable for Americans like myself?
So we got rid of the individual mandate on Obamacare, which was the worst part of Obamacare, and now you could actually say it's not Obamacare because that's how big it was, where you had to pay a fortune for the privilege of not having to pay for bad health insurance. So we got rid of that. That was a big, big thing.
The individual mandate was what actually gave the subsidies their power by having everybody pay into Obamacare. It made people signing up for premiums much cheaper. Yep.
And by doing that, and we will always have, by the way, we always...
Now, I'm not a supporter of Obamacare. I don't like Obamacare whatsoever, but what Trump's planning on replacing it with is nothing. So...
protecting people with pre-existing conditions, and
except for the rhetoric that like people, this is like one of the things that people mostly care about, and that's because so many Americans have pre-existing conditions, and some of them include pregnancy, diabetes, which you can get from birth, asthma, which you can get from birth, and then other things that may even be job related. So Trump using that, well, we're covering pre-existing conditions with an executive order, which is not law. An executive order can really only tell his government to do certain things. Who is actually going to hold insurance companies accountable when they do not cover pre-existing conditions? Because right now, it is protected under Obamacare or the ACA. And so if somebody were to actually take it to the courts, they would have to be covered for their pre-existing conditions because it is covered by law, not by executive order.
Can't say that more strongly. But we've been able to bring healthcare costs way down. Now, I took over Obamacare, got rid of the individual mandate, made it good, managed it much better. Remember, they had the $5 billion website disaster and all of the problems they had. The problem with Obamacare, it's not good. We'd like to terminate it, and we want a much less expensive healthcare that's a much better healthcare, and that's where we're aiming. And if we can...
But he can't really even dictate that, because the thing is, though, is that it's tied mostly to insurance choices, and that's decided by board members and CEOs. So as long as we have for-profit healthcare, we cannot guarantee anybody that we are going to have cheaper healthcare. And there's by no means any way that Trump is going to throw more money into Medicaid and Medicare to expand it. And that was another part of Obamacare that I actually kind of like, is that states were able to opt into expanding Medicare and Medicaid. With that gone, it's going to throw a lot of people off of Medicare and Medicaid, especially since Trump also wants to cut back payroll taxes, which feed into those same programs. Trump is probably the epitome of laissez-faire, where we are going backwards from FDR and deeper into a Great Depression. But since maybe because we have so many luxuries and commodities and a bigger middle class these days, well, it's a shrinking, dwindling middle class and a rising wealth and quality gap. It's interesting how we're going to handle a lot of this as the rich become so rich that they're untouchable and the poor become so poor that they die.
Do that, and we have a very good chance of doing it. But we've also brought down the price of Obamacare. Problem with Obamacare, it basically is never going to be great. And I want to give great health care.
He didn't even outline the problems with it. We all know that healthcare is expensive, but it's not necessarily Obamacare's fault. Obamacare did try to reduce these prices with subsidies and covering certain coverage that most healthcares don't even want to touch. But he offered nothing in replacement. He just said that we want to offer better, we want to be greater, and we're going to be good.
Mr. President, I got to follow up on the pre-existing conditions. This is such a big issue for voters.
It is a big issue for me, too.
In point of fact, your administration is about to go to the Supreme Court to argue to throw out the rest of Obamacare, which includes the protections for pre-existing conditions.
That's right.
So your administration is in court right now trying to get rid of that protection.
In order to replace it with a much better health care at a much lower price. And always, under all circumstances, we are going to protect the Republicans. And I mean, maybe I changed the party a lot over the last 3 years, but we will protect people with pre-existing conditions. And Savannah, what I want to do, get rid of the terrible Obamacare. I've already done it to a large extent because, as you know, the individual mandate is gone. That was the worst part.
You've repealed, but you haven't replaced. Now, you've been in office almost 4 years.
What we have done.
You had both houses of Congress, Senate and House, in Republican hands, and there is not a replacement yet.
That's right. I'm sorry, but if you look, we had both houses, and what did we do? We got rid of the individual mandate.
But
that went
the
through the
promise was
legislature.
repeal and replace.
Look, we should be on the same side. I want it very simple. I'm going to put it very simple. We would like to terminate it, and we would like to replace it with something that's much less expensive and much better.
That's essentially meaningless when you have no plan.
We will always protect people with pre-existing conditions.
But if you're successful in court in November, those pre-existing...
Also, people that have caught COVID, including the president, all now have pre-existing conditions.
That promise will be gone.
If we don't succeed, we are running the remnants of whatever's left because we took it.
That's 8 million people, not counting the 200,000 that have passed away from COVID-19, but roughly 8 million people who now have pre-existing conditions. 8 million people were thrown into poverty. Probably can't afford health care. And all he is saying is we are going to replace a bad healthcare plan with a plan. With a good healthcare plan. I can promise you it's going to be good because I can make those promises.
Apart. We are running the remnants of whatever is left much better than the previous administration, which ran it very badly. But we'd like to have new health care, much better and much less expensive.
Let me get to question number 5, and you'll like this. He's stuck in traffic. His name is Joe White. He is registered as a Democrat. He says he's leaning toward Biden, and Biden had voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. And his question was, a second stimulus payment has been broadly agreed upon by the Republicans and Democrats, and yet now we're in October and it's still not passed. Why not use your office to make the second stimulus payment a separate, targeted emergency relief package to help Americans weather the pandemic?
Well, we've actually passed 3 packages, and we're on our 4th, and I agree.
He's asking specifically, Joe White is asking specifically about the stimulus checks for average Americans, allowing them to have more spending money in these times of short change. He said we passed big ones. I think he said 4. Did he say 4 or 3?
To help Americans weather the pandemic.
Well, we've actually passed 3 packages.
He said 3. There's only been 1 package for the American people. There has been 3 for big industries. So let that sink in.
And we're on our 4th, and I agree with him 100%. He should vote for me. The problem you have is Nancy Pelosi. She couldn't care less about the worker. She couldn't care less about our people, and we should have a stimulus, and I want a stimulus. The Republicans will approve a stimulus. The problem is she doesn't want to do it because she thinks it's bad for her election. The fact is she's wrong because people know she's in our way. She's not approving it. She doesn't appreciate our people, and she doesn't appreciate at all our workers. Nancy Pelosi.
You know that's a lie because Senator Mitch McConnell said that they don't want to pass the House bill because it's too expensive, meaning that there's money in there that they don't want to give to certain groups, certain people. And, of course, Trump uses it to be like they want to give it to Democrats to support their Democrat states. And that allows Republicans to be like, yeah, well, then fuck them. when really the Republicans on the bottom rung of society need that money about just as much as the Democrats on the bottom rung of society. Me being an independent also would need that money because of the cuts and costs of the businesses that we all work for. So yeah, he is not the president of the people. He is the president of the wealthy people. So
Pelosi, we are ready to sign and pass stimulus, but she's got to.
People do not love the back and forth of Washington, but this has been a roller coaster. Back in early October, you one day tweeted, "No more negotiations until after Election Day. I'm walking away." Then I think the next couple of days you said maybe we can do something targeted. Right. Then you said I want a big bill, but then Senate Republicans said no, we're not for that. So you're the big deal maker. How come this is so? You yourself have changed positions.
Did you ever hear of a word called negotiation? We're negotiating, okay?
But people's lives are hanging in the balance.
And you know who I'm negotiating against? Nancy Pelosi, because she doesn't want to give the money. We should have stimulus.
By saying it's Nancy Pelosi's fault, it's just like saying that the reason why there's so much COVID going around is because of China.
This was not our people's fault. This was China's fault. And she's penalizing our people. I'm ready to sign a big, beautiful stimulus. You saw the other day, I say go big or go home, right?
That's what
I want it to be big. I want it to be bold. I want the money to go directly to the people.
Senate Republicans with you? They're going to go big for a big old number?
They'll go. They're going to be very
happy. So far they...
Yeah, but the thing is, though, is that it's going to be for big industry. Like, Mitch McConnell did release it, and it has more money for the PPP, which he claims is for small businesses, even though big businesses and Kanye West's business all participated in. And as long as they can report where that money went, the PP loan is no longer a loan. It's literally just money given away. So we're having actual socialism for rich people. Not even real socialism. It's the American understanding of socialism, where the government does stuff and gives away free shit. And it's all for businesses, big money, capital, while the meeple and the working class, they're left to the wayside to catch COVID or maybe even some more poverty. And maybe that'll cut down our population and we won't have to take care of as many people. Maybe that's why Trump's more competent with a few million people rather than hundreds of millions of people to lead. All right.
They have not said it
because I haven't asked them to, because I can't get through Nancy Pelosi. Okay. If Nancy Pelosi and I, through my representative...
The House passed the bill. The Senate refuses to vote on it.
Or directly, I don't care. If we agree to something, the Republicans will agree to it.
Okay. Our next question comes from, this is interesting. She voted for Clinton in 2016, but recently changed her registration from Democrat to Independent. She says she's truly undecided. Her name's Becky Lightman. Hello, Becky. What's your question?
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Nice to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you. So, corporate tax rates are a hot button issue, and you have cut corporate tax rates, and your opponent Joe Biden is planning to raise them.
Right.
A lot of Americans think that corporations don't pay their share of taxes and want to see those tax rates increase. Right. What do you say to those Americans to maybe tell them why you want the corporate tax rate lower and why that helps them?
It's a great question. We've created more jobs than this country has ever created. We were up to 100.
It's not true.
60 million jobs. We were never even close to that number.
It's not true.
We were just hitting 160 million jobs. Companies are pouring into our nation because of the tax rate.
I mean, that is such an egregious statistic to lie about. It's just so not true.
And if Biden comes in and raises taxes on everybody, including middle income taxes, which he wants to do, you will blow this thing and you'll end up with a depression, the likes of which you've never had. That's what's going to happen. We have something that's really good. The reason we're coming back so strong is because we built a very strong foundation. Companies are moving in. Car companies are moving into Michigan.
Not true.
Into Ohio, into South Carolina and North Carolina just today. So what's happening is they're coming in because we reduced the taxes. Our taxes, our corporate taxes, were the highest in the world, and now they're among the lower taxes. They're not the lowest, but they're among the lowest. And what that means is jobs. But also, we're doing a very big, and we've done a very big middle-income tax package. So if we get in, we're going to do the middle-income tax package. But it's a great question. And if he comes along and raises rates, all those companies that are coming in, they will leave the U.S. so fast your head will spin. We can't let that happen.
On the subject of taxes, as you know, the New York Times has...
It's not true, because we're a massive consumer market. So if they want to sell and have their products here, we can tax the fuck out of them. So it's bullshit. Honestly, too, you can have businesses that operate, like, sell products in America and tax the fuck out of them, and they still would have employees outside of America. It's I don't know. It's just that simple man talk that it's just like, if it, what did What did Robert Evans say? Be suspicious of simple answers. That shit's for teenagers that shit's for fascists and teenagers. Be suspicious of simple answers. That shit's for fascists and teenagers.
It says years of your tax returns, among other things. It says that you have debts of approximately $421 million that you have personally.
And we did find out that it's actually over $1 billion.
Guaranteed, and that will come due in the next 4 years. The question is, on behalf of voters, who do you owe $421 million to?
First of all, let me answer. What they did is illegal, number one. Also, the numbers are all wrong with the numbers they released. And just so you understand, when you have a lot of real estate, you know a lot of it, okay? Right down the road, Doral, big stuff, great stuff. When I decided to run, I'm very under-levered, fortunately, but I'm very under-levered. I have a very, very small percentage of debt compared, in fact, some of it I did as favors to institutions that wanted to loan me money. $400 million compared to the assets that I have, all of these great properties all over the world, and frankly, the Bank of America building in San Francisco. I don't love what's happening to San Francisco.
Well, do I hear you right? It sounds like you're saying $400 million isn't that much.
One of the biggest office buildings.
But are you confirming that, yes, you do owe some $400 million?
What I'm saying is that it's a tiny percentage of my net worth.
That sounds
and
like
you'll
yes.
see that soon because we're doing things, we've given, I think it's 108 or 112 pages of financial detail to elections. And, we have to file as the president, as any politician, you have to file. Nobody ever looks at that. When they do, they see how incredible the company is. But more importantly, they see where this debt is. No, I don't owe Russia money. I owe a very, very small, it's called mortgages. Yeah. People have a house, they put a mortgage.
Any foreign bank, any foreign entity?
Not that I know of, but I will probably, because it's so easy to solve. And if you'd like to do, I will let
This is such a nonsensical answer, too. But she's like, any foreign ones? And he's like, well, I don't know.
You know who I owe whatever small amount of money. I want to say two things. Number one,
she's asking who, and he said, you already know who. And the thing is we don't, but we do know that Deutsche Bank, we do know that's one of them, but...
A very small amount of money. Number two, it's very straight. It's very, very straight. But it's a tiny percentage of the worth. Did you ever hear the expression underlevered?
Yeah.
I'm extremely underlevered.
Well, here's the thing. You could clear this up tonight by just releasing your tax returns yourself. I mean, that's what I imagine. I think people are just wondering.
As you know,
you're
I'm
the only...
It turned out that I am
yes,
under audit.
They actually... Says,
excuse me. No, but you
the IRS says that doesn't stop...
He has been under audit for years, but that's because when you're under audit, that means you've done some shady shit.
But you accused me of not being under audit previously, and so did other people at NBC, and I am under audit. So that was solved. That's good. I am under audit. No person in their right mind would release prior to working out the deal with the IRS. And I'll go a step further. I'm treated very badly by the IRS. They treat me very, very badly. You have people in there from previous administrations. They treat me very badly. But we're under audit. It's very routine in many ways, but we're under audit. They like to change the game, change the rules, do everything. You saw what they did with the Tea Party people. You saw what they did with the religious groups.
But to be clear, there is no law or rule that prohibits you from releasing your tax returns.
No, except common sense and intelligence and having lawyers that say, because I would love to release them, and as soon as we come to a conclusion, I will release them, and very gladly. But if you go to elections, and if you take a look, you'll see 112, I think it's 112. It talks about the income, which is rather massive. It talks about all of the properties. They have them listed. You can never learn more. But you know what happened? People went there. All the reporters went. There was like a feeding frenzy. This was originally when I filed it. And I filed it every year. I update it every year. My son is here. They run the company. I don't run the company.
It also says that you paid $750 in taxes in the year you were elected.
Yeah,
is that true or not?
That's a statutory number. It's a statutory.
But is that true?
I think it's a filing number. You pay $750. It's a filing or filing fee.
Most people here probably pay.
How many questions is he not directly able to answer? And then shifts into whataboutism. I mean, like, this lady that has been over his shoulder this entire time is just constantly nodding and agreeing with the president. It's just bothering the crap out of me because, like, this camera angle just seems like that that there's, like, somebody on the president's side, and that gives some of the viewers a little bit of solace. It's kind of ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. All of this is ridiculous because this lady is just nodding along with like every nonsensical answer that he's giving out that is in pure defense. He's in complete survival mode here of fending off any truth or any light that would shed on the true darkness inside of this man's heart.
I don't know. I can tell you this. If they have my tax returns, as you know, they have to go to jail. It's illegal. But their numbers were wrong. But let me tell you what else. I don't owe money to any of these sinister people. This has been going on for years now. Russia, Russia, Russia. It turned out to be a hoax. And it turned out to be that Hillary Clinton and the Democrats were dealing with Russia, not me.
So here's the thing, though, is that he always accuses all of these other people of illegal activity, and yet no investigation stemmed from that either. And, I mean, I'm going to put on my conspiracy hat again with barely no evidence, but it just seems like a game played by the elites that they can accuse each other of fraud and corruption, and neither of them really ever suffer any true consequences except for not holding power.
It's a whole hoax. So I would not mind at all saying who it is, but it's a very small. When you look at vast properties like I have, and they're big and they're beautiful and they're well located, when you look at that, the amount of money, $400 million, is a peanut. It's extremely underlevered. And it's levered with normal banks. Not a big deal.
All right, let's take a break. We'll get more voter questions right after this.
God, he answered that question fucking horribly. Wow. Wow, what a mess. She asked, who are you in debt to? And he's like, it's probably banks. Probably normal banks. And we did find out from the Washington Post over this weekend that it's actually over $1 billion. So a bit more than 400 million, which seems to be peanuts to the president.
We are live in Miami in the middle of a town hall with President Trump. Thank you again for being here. We've got another voter, Adam Sugar. He voted for Clinton in 2016. He's registered as a Democrat and says he's supporting Biden. Adam, take it away.
Thank you, Savannah. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Adam.
4 years ago, Senate leadership said it was inappropriate to push through a nominee in an election year. Yet they fast-tracked your nominee for the Supreme Court just today. The question I have for you is, what do you say to the voter that thinks it's hypocritical to act in that manner and that they can't trust Republicans' word?
So when I was elected, and when a president is elected, they're elected for a period of 4 years. And Justice Ginsburg said it best, I think, talking about President Obama having to do with somebody else, that the president is put there for 4 years, not for 3 years. So during this fourth year, it happened to come up, unfortunately, because I had great respect for Justice Ginsburg, but a vacancy happened to come up, and we picked somebody that's outstanding. She has been an absolute star. And I'm extremely proud of it. But again, plenty of time. I mean, there's plenty of time. We're going to do it before the election, but we also have much time after the election, but there's no reason to wait. Because
it's just wild because Obama's nominee had like 9 months for them to do hearings and confirmations. Trump's literally doing it like 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Amy Coney Barrett is being shoved into this position. It is not the same situation. It is actually far worse and highly hypocritical. Both parties, I think, in this situation are very hypocritical. But this isn't a straightforward answer of, like, how do we trust the Republican Party now?
Because it's almost unanimous, it seems to me, certainly within the Republican Party, and frankly, most of the Democrats within closed rooms. I guarantee you that this is an outstanding person. And I'm using my fourth term. And you know, if you look at it, and if you put the shoe on the other foot, if they had this, they would do it 100%. So there's been 29 times when this has happened. All 29 times, a president has done exactly what I've done.
Can I just, to the voters' point, I'll just say that in 2016, you were on another show.
29 times, but we've had way more elections than that. So it's not as precedent as they were making it sound.
Another morning show, and you were asked whether President Obama should nominate a Supreme Court Justice Merrick Garland, and you said, I think the Senate should wait until the next president and let the president pick. Now, that was 8 months before the election. This is 3 weeks before the election.
I have a lot of respect, by the way.
So you have changed your position on this.
I have a lot of respect for Judge Garland, I want to tell you that. But I'll tell you, the whole ball game changed when I saw the way they treated Justice Kavanaugh. I have never seen any human being, and I'm not just talking about Supreme Court, I have never seen a human being treated so badly with false accusations and everything else. I have never seen anything like it. And you know what? The truth is, Savannah, like it or not, the ball game changed a lot.
Oh, crap. What was her name? Oh, no. I'm so bad at this, but Joe Biden had to apologize to her because he did a very terrible job. I can't remember her name. This is terrible. Yeah, Anita Hill. Jesus. I'm so stupid. Anita Hill received a much more worse treatment from Brett Kavanaugh. Brett Kavanaugh they're kind of whitewashing this whole history of that he had just because now he's confirmed. He wasn't actually proven innocent. The thing is that he had the statute of limitations on his side. The true essence of it is that the Republicans just didn't care about the accusations against him. So it's not that he was actually innocent or that he was mistreated. It's just it was extended much longer than normal trials because he had criminal activity in his past that maybe harms the integrity of a Supreme Court justice.
There has never been anybody treated so badly as now Justice Kavanaugh.
You've mentioned that you would like to see Amy Coney Barrett confirmed to the Supreme Court in case any challenges come up in connection with the election.
Yeah.
Do you expect her to rule for you?
I think she'll have to make that decision. I don't think she has any conflict at all. A Supreme Court judge does not have, they can make their own decision.
But the thing is, though, is that if she doesn't vote alongside the lines that Trump says that he wants, or the outcome that he wants, he would say that she did a bad job.
And they actually have additional power to make that decision. It would be totally up to her. I would think that she would be able to rule either for me or against me. I don't see any conflict whatsoever. We have an election coming up. I think it's the most important election in the history of our country. If for any chance, and it probably won't, and I hope it doesn't ever get to the Supreme Court, but if it did, I would think that she would rule one way or the other. I would think so.
But for you think she would rule for you?
I have no idea.
Of course she'll rule one way or the other, but...
Believe it or not, I never asked her about it. I never talked about it. I didn't talk about any of the obvious things that you could talk about. And I think a lot of people in my position might. But in speaking...
But that's also because we know, from the Michael Cohen case, is that we know Trump speaks in a bit more of a mob boss way. It's a little bit more indirect, and he still wants everybody that he puts around him to be loyal to him.
To a lot of very brilliant people and people that do this for a living, they say it's better not to talk. So I talked to her about life. I talked to her about the fact, would you like to do this? Are you willing to do this? Because it's a tremendous burden. The answer was yes. She is unbelievably well qualified, but I never spoke to her about these various questions.
Let's get our next voter. She's leaning to you, Mr. President. She voted for you in 2016. She is a registered Republican. Her name is Mariah Green. Mariah, what's your question?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President. I'm honored to be with you here tonight, sir, so thank you. I'm a pro-life millennial, and my question for you today is, if Roe v. Wade is ultimately overturned in the future, what protections would be put in place or kept for where the mother's life is in jeopardy in relation to high-risk pregnancies?
Well, again, I'm not ruling on this, and Roe v. Wade is something that a lot of people would say, obviously, you're going to speak to somebody. I also, two other great justices, Justice Gorsuch and Justice Kavanaugh. I never spoke to them about Roe v. Wade. I never spoke to them about election laws. I never spoke to them about anything. And I've done the right thing from a moral standpoint. I don't even know from a legal standpoint, but it was the right thing. I think...
And I feel like that has a lot to do with, he doesn't actually know much about, law history and the judges, and I think he has a team of people around him to really think this is who we want to appoint over the next 10 years that are mostly going to support the corporate interests of America, because that's usually what the Supreme Court ends up justifying. It's very rare, and in some cases where they actually vote on Roe v. Wade. That was one case, and then we had the Civil Rights Act 1964, and what was the other one? And the ruling in 2015 on gay marriage. Those are rare cases compared to how many other cases that they're taking in that are mostly surround around legislation and business operations. So that's mainly what they're focusing in on. It very rarely has anything to do with what we call the culture war that we've got going on between splits of what the civil society deems to be lawful and unlawful.
Depending on what happens with Roe v. Wade, I think that perhaps it could get sent down to the states, and the states would decide. I also think perhaps nothing will happen. I have not talked to her about it. I think it would be inappropriate to talk to her about it. And some people would say you can talk to her about it. I just think it would be inappropriate.
But what is your preference? Because agreed, that's not something you should talk to the judge about. But would you like to see Roe versus Wade overturned?
I would like to see a brilliant jurist, a brilliant person who has done this in great depth and has actually skirted this issue for a long time, make a decision. And that's why I chose her. I think that she's going to make a great decision. I did not tell her what decision to make, and I think it would be inappropriate to say right now, because I don't want to do anything to influence her.
If he thinks that she's going to make a great decision, that means he already knows the decision that she's going to make, and it has to align with the decision that he wants. And she's asking, what's the decision that you want?
I want her to get approved, and then I want her to go by the law, and I know she's going to make a
And so far in her own writings and lectures, she is not pro Roe v. Wade.
great decision for our country.
But you're running as a pro-life
people I put
Republican.
there.
Most pro-life Republicans would like to see Roe v. Wade overturned and abortion banned.
Many of them would.
What do you
Perhaps
think?
most of them would. I am telling you, I don't want to do anything to influence anything right now. I don't want to go out tomorrow and say, oh, he's trying to give her a signal, because I didn't speak to her about it. I've done the right thing in so doing. How she's going to rule, you're going to find out perhaps, or you might not find out. I mean, it may never get there. It may never get there. We'll see what happens.
All right, we have another question. This is
dodge.
Cindy Velez. She is undecided. She says she's leaning to Biden, and she did vote for Clinton in 2016. She's registered as a Democrat. Hi, Cindy. What's your question?
Good evening, Savannah.
Cindy,
Good
thank
evening,
you.
Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
As the mother of a young male of color, I have raised him to respect authority, not only because it's the right thing to do, but also out of fear that he may face profiling or be considered a criminal. As an educator, I've also had similar conversations with my high school students. Mr. President, what will you and your administration do to better prepare our law enforcement officers to work in collaboration with the communities that they serve, and also to protect the lives of innocent Black and Latinos from police brutality and injustice?
Right. I fully understand the question, and I saw everything that you saw over the summer, and it was a terrible thing to watch. We were very strongly, we have a senator named Tim Scott from South Carolina. He came up with a bill that should have been approved. It was great. It was a bill that was strong in terms of law enforcement and strong in terms of enforcing the proper thing and doing the proper thing by law enforcement. And the Democrats just wouldn't go for it. They wouldn't go for it at all. And I don't know why, because it was a really great bill. But I do have to say this.
What was in the bill?
And some people don't like it when I say it, but a lot of people agree. I have done more for the African American community than any president, with the exception of Abraham Lincoln. Criminal justice reform, prison reform, historically Black colleges and universities. I got them funded. They were on a year-to-year basis.
I don't know what criminal justice reform he's admitting to. There has been no big legislation on that. One thing I would want to acknowledge here is that America has 25% of our population in prison. Obama attempted to move the federal government away from using private prisons. Trump reversed that as soon as he got into office and immediately used that to imprison the refugees and the asylum seekers and immigrants. But that doesn't mean that also, too, our civilians, who tend to be on the darker persuasion of skin color, end up in those same private prisons, which their need is recidivism and the need of bodies to continue to get funding, which then turns into profit. It's literally a vacuum of tax dollars that is paid for and maintained through the suffrage of taxpayers and civilians. So I don't know what criminal justice reform he's speaking of at all.
They could have been put out of business as soon as our country had a little bad year. They would have said, I'm sorry, we're not going to fund you. I got them 10-year funding and financing, and more than they even asked for. I became very friendly with a lot of the heads. But we've done more funding and financing as soon as our country had colleges and universities. I got them funded. They were on a year-to-year basis. They could have been put out of business as soon as our country had a little bad year. They would have said, I'm sorry, we're not going to fund you. I got them 10-year funding and financing, and more than they even asked for. I became very friendly with a lot of the heads. But we've done more, and of course, opportunity zones. But criminal justice reform, everybody said it could not be done. President.
I like how he just throws out the term opportunity zones when really it's coded language for gentrification. It opens up at-risk property, low-income property, sells it to big investment at a very low price in order for them to restructure it for luxury commodities and places to hang out for well-to-do people. So I don't know what he means by opportunity zones, because if we can also recall is that he, what else did he say? That he saved the suburban neighborhoods, and that was by eliminating a President Obama era. Was it an executive order? I think it was legislation, right? No, I think it was an executive order. It was an Obama era bill that had tried to allow more low-income housing in suburban areas, which is basically subsidized housing so lower-income people can move into higher opportunity zones. Trump knocked that down to keep poor people in low-income areas, which tend to have the least amount of opportunities, especially when trying to leave poverty. So
Obama and Biden never even tried to do it. They never even tried.
I just told you how they did try. They tried to move low-income housing, which unfortunately is also tied to a skin color, your income. I can't remember what, I don't like talking like this. I hate when we come to the whole racial thing. If you can see in the video, I'm brown. I'm an American mutt. I hate this so much, but low income is tied to the black community just because a lot of black people live below the poverty line or at it. And so by eliminating low-income housing opportunities, you are also eliminating opportunities for low-income families who tend to be disproportionately black or brown, as I am. So I just want to acknowledge that, because him saying that Obama and Biden didn't try is a little bit of a lie. Even though they didn't, in my personal opinion, I don't think they tried enough. Trump reversed course on a lot of things that they did try on.
But I say that, and I say it often, I'll say it loud, and I'm very proud of it. And I have a great relationship because of what I've done with the African-American community. I'm very proud of it.
Let's go to our next question. We have Paulette Dale. She leans slightly to Biden. She voted for Clinton in 2016. She's registered as a Republican. Paulette, what's your question?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
I have to say, you have a great smile.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, he does. You're so handsome when you smile. Okay. As the daughter of immigrants to the United States who fled Eastern Europe due to religious persecution,
right.
The United States immigration policies are very personal for me.
Right.
Surveys show that most Americans and the majority of Republicans support the Dreamers program. So my question for you, Mr. President, is if you are elected to a second term, do you expect to pursue your previous efforts to cut the DACA program?
Yeah.
Why or why not?
And the DACA is somewhat different than Dreamers. You understand that, and you understand it better than anybody probably in this room. Where do you come from, by the way, originally? Where?
My grandparents were from Russia and Poland.
That's very good. Okay. So we are going to take care of DACA. We're going to take care of Dreamer. It's working right now. We're negotiating different aspects of immigration and immigration law.
So by taking care, is he answering her question by saying, yes, we are going to continue on the course that we have been doing so far, which is demonizing and cutting funds and trying to kick them out?
We've built now over 400 miles of border wall, southern border, Mexico.
Yep. So that's the thing, is that Trump ran on this, and then in 2019 was his ultimate anti-immigration year. And so all of everything that happened in 2020 has made it hard to remember that. But yeah, Trump is the anti-refugee, anti-immigrant president, and will continue to do so as his career goes on, because he's more focused on the wall and making sure that ICE has shit to do alongside funding those private prisons, or concentration camps at the border, which are also infected with COVID-19, and sterilizing women. So
Mexico is working very closely with us. We have the strongest border we've ever had.
He's not answering anything about drama and Dreamers or DACA. He said we're going to take care of them, which, I'm just going to assume that take care of them is in the same way that he says, take care of them. That's mob talk. But so far, he's going back on his same old rhetoric of anti-immigrant rhetoric.
We want people to come into our country. They have to come in legally. But we are working very hard on the DACA program, and you will be, I think, very happy over the course of the next year.
Thank you.
Because I feel the same way as you do about it.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
President.
you. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, in point of fact, the DACA program, there are, under your administration, no new applicants are allowed. And in fact, the DACA recipients now have to renew every year as opposed to every 2 years. So in fact, the DACA program has been curtailed by your administration.
Well, what happened is because of the pandemic, much changed on the immigration front.
No.
Mexico is heavily infected, as you know, and we've made it very, very difficult to come in because of the pandemic and other reasons.
They made it more difficult before the pandemic.
Crime. But we have a very strong border right now, and we have to keep it that way.
And then he did it again. He equated the immigrants and the refugees to criminals. He just said at the end of that, crime. Crime has a lot to do with it. COVID-19 and crime. So he's still keeping up the Mexican are rapists argument.
But we want people to come into our country, but they have to come in through a merit system, and they have to come in legally. And people are very, very happy with it.
The merit system's fucked up, because in order for you to come into our country, you have to provide economic value. You have to be able to contribute to the GDP. They don't give a fuck if you can commit to taxes. Trump doesn't care about taxes unless it's gonna, actually hurt the military, which it never does. That's where all the money goes. But he wants people who can contribute to the GDP, the economy, and the private sector. That's the merit-based system that they're looking at. Maybe even some scientists that can figure out how to gas all the refugees. I don't know. That's me conspiracying again, but fuck it, dude. It's just when we get to this section of colored people and immigrants, it gets extremely dark. And he has to be very careful with his dog whistles here because he's on CNBC, not Fox News. This isn't a rally.
I haven't heard any complaints about that. But what happened is because of the pandemic, we have to be extra cautious.
You have been promising this immigration bill since, well, at least July when you told my colleague on Telemundo it was coming, but nothing's come yet.
It's very happy. The fact is we got rid of catch and release, which is a disaster. You catch somebody. They could be a murderer. They could be a rapist, and we're supposed to release them into our country. These are the laws.
He did it again. Because if they were actual criminals, you wouldn't just release them. They would be held under criminal charges. If they were pending on their immigration status, it's not fair to hold them in a detention center if they are not criminals. So you release them so that they can either begin finding work, or they can begin setting up for their court cases, or they can start meeting with their family. There's a lot to it, but of course we're just conflating them with rapists because all immigrants are that.
Laws that I inherited, we ended that program. Now, I think you're going to see something very, very good. The whole immigration, if you look at what's going on, people used to pour into our country, and especially during the pandemic. I think even you, Savannah, will be very impressed.
Sir, we have about 30 seconds left. I think about people sitting out there tonight. There are some who love you. Some of them are sitting right around here, and some who will never vote for you. But there are people in the middle. There are people who aren't sure.
That's right.
There are people who want to know why they should give you a second.
There was a guy when she said there are people who aren't sure, and he just put his fist up and he's like, yeah, I don't know. But that's just because Americans don't understand political science. They don't understand civics. We don't understand our Constitution. If we were much more informed, you would see the actual threat to the democratic republic that Trump is.
Chance and how you might improve in a second term. 30 seconds. What would you say to them?
Because I've done a great job. We have the strongest economy in the world. We closed it up. We are coming around the corner. The vaccines are coming out soon, and our economy is strong. We are at a level with jobs like we've never been before. We've rebuilt our military. We've rebuilt our borders. We had no borders.
And here's the thing, too, is he said that we shut it down. He shut down travel. And that was commercial travel. For the most part, we still had to keep moving certain goods. But he didn't do any governmental shutdowns. That was all state and local governments that decided to do that. So there were states that never shut down.
No, nothing. We've rebuilt so much. We've given you the greatest tax cut in the history of our country, greatest regulation cut, equally as important. And we created...
Middle and low income taxes did not go down or up during Trump's presidency. The corporate did, so that has to tell me who he's speaking to there. It's a promise. Let's see here real quick. Market Watch is a pretty good one. Trump's budgeting another tax cut. Americans paid almost $64 billion less in federal income taxes during the first year under the Republican tax overhaul signed into law in late 2017. Yeah, but that's an average overall of yeah. So with some of the sharpest drops clustered among taxpayers earning between $25,000 and $100,000 a year, even as the overall number of refunds dropped during a turbulent tax season. So if the refunds dropped, that is because the amount of taxes that you paid also went down. That's according to... The data were released Monday, providing the first substantial look at the effects of a tax law that reduced rates for 5 of the 7 income tax brackets, and also reduced the corporate income tax rate. The 2017 law expanded certain credits and deductions while capping others, including a $10,000 state and local tax deduction limit, which critics said singled out residents of left-leaning states that happen to have higher local taxes. Nice. All right. So I guess overall there was a bit of decrease. The double-digit percentage decreases in average tax liability started with a 12.5% drop for people making $15,000 to $20,000 a year. Yeah, and that's why I ended up getting a smaller refund, is because I ended up paying less. I'm in that tax bracket. Taxpayers making between $40,000 and $50,000 largest fall in average tax liability, 14.5%, while high-end households making between the second largest decrease. 4.3% decrease in average tax liability. Almost 890,000 more returns showed taxes owed under the first year tax cuts. Sum total of those tax bills, $170 billion, was still $1 billion smaller than in last year under the previous tax code. See, the IRS issued almost 2 million fewer refunds on a year-over-year basis, amounting to almost $360 million less in refunds. The data, according to Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, show the tax cuts were effective. Adjusted gross incomes were 5.7% higher in November 2019 statistics than a year earlier. He emphasized President Trump's pro-growth economic policies, including the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, are working to increase wages and lower the tax burden for hardworking Americans. It just ended up crippling our infrastructure. Because when you pay less in taxes, you have a weaker government, which is the intended goal of Republicans and Libertarians. So I guess there's positives for them. I ended up paying still about like 20% in tax. When it comes to income tax, and then I don't have many other assets that I have to pay tax on, so my taxes actually remained about the same. There's a lot of factors that kind of make it hard to quantify it with the blanket statement of you made this much this year, not necessarily like this is how much you have in assets.
New levels of jobs that nobody thought was possible, and next year is going to be better than ever before.
I got to leave it there. I got a wrap from the control room. Mr. President, thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to the voters' questions. That concludes our town hall. We do want to thank the president again, as well as our audience in hot Miami and all of you watching at home. And a reminder, Donald Trump and Joe Biden are scheduled to meet in person a week from tonight in Nashville, a second and final presidential debate moderated by our own Kristen Welker. Have a good evening, and thanks for being with us.
Yeah. It's not because the 160 million jobs is not because of anything necessarily of his taxes or policy, but the 160 million currently employed is a record since the number of people working has risen with the population. Yep. All right. Well, that was Trump's town hall, which of course was full of dodgy misdirections and a bit of interrupting and just not knowing certain information. So I hope that was informative to you, because we'll have to return here shortly to get a little bit of that Biden in you. Oh, yeah, that was creepy. So, yeah, up next is Joe Biden's piece. For now, I'm just going to have to end the stream because it doesn't allow me to play my exit music. And so I will be back shortly with the stream after I get a bit of water and everything set up. So I will cut the stream out, and then I will play the podcast out with a little bit of Crumbling Castle, and then I will be right back with both for Biden's town hall. But from Trump, just a little, little piece here is that we had a good bit of, Democrat blaming per usual, because for a fascist regime to succeed, it has to have an enemy. And normally it's an anti-communist, anti-socialist platform. The thing that I think is actually what he is mostly running on is just that. Joe Biden is running on, well, I'm not Trump, and Trump is still running on, well, I'm not the Democrats. So, I mean, I don't really see much benefits coming out for the working class with a Trump presidency, because his policies have already focused in on like the top 1%. And he is in the proponent of trickle-down economics, but when you actually do the bit of research on trickle-down economics, that's not the outcome that we necessarily see. And he still can't really come up with what he's going to replace Obamacare with. He still isn't able to acknowledge who QAnon is. There's a lot of issues with Trump's presidency of him just pretending not to know things that he probably should know. And also not really giving us the information of what he's going to do other than make America great again. So he did not convince me to vote for him in this video. And I don't think Joe Biden's really going to get me excited in his either, just because he is that conservative Democrat. But so far, having a extreme Republican moving us back into laissez-faire capitalism where regulation is of a distant memory and capitalism basically runs damn near everything, and democracy sits by the wayside, it is concerning, on top of the fact that we are seeing the rise of right-wing militias and a bit of deterioration in civics. So we're just going to have to check. I'll probably do another video on the next debate too, if that still happens. But for now, let me know what you think. Hit me up at AzaWave on Twitter, AZAWAV. That's TOX News with an American flag next to it. You can also find me on all these podcast streaming services. YouTube, Poordom Rebel is the channel. I know I should probably figure out a way to sync all of my shit better, but it is what it is, baby. And shouts out to Anchor for allowing me to create a podcast, for free. Yeah, fuck it. And if you want to join me back for Biden, I will have that uploaded shortly after this one. Just know I love you very much, and fascism now? How about fascism never? Mwahaha.